East Midlands, the new Battle of Bosworth. Can a safe Tory seat fall to the Liberal Democrats? And we'll be running the BBC's reality check over George Osborne's promise of creating 140,000 jobs here in the East Midlands. Hello, I'm Mari Ashby, and as you can see, all four contenders for Bosworth are here. David Tredinnick for the Conservatives, Michael Mullaney for the Liberal Democrats, Chris Keeley is the Labour candidate, and David Sprayson is standing for UKIP. Welcome to you all, and of course we'll be hearing from all the candidates in just a moment. First though, what are the issues in Bosworth? What do voters there really want? Our political reporter Tim Parker's been finding out.
It's a largely rural setting covering most of West Leicestershire. Hinckley is its major town, and like the rest of the county, it's a Conservative stronghold. Here at Lots for Tots in Hinckley, they might not be singing the praises of the politicians, but they do have lots of questions here for the candidates.
They're building a lot of new houses in Hinckley, and we have no new schools, no new classes. Where do all those children go?
I'm a grandparent and I look after my grandson one day a week, and I find the fees for childcare are just astronomical.
If they're going to offer 30 hours free childcare, which is great for parents, we've got to make sure that childminders are fairly paid too.
At the other end of the voting age range, here at the Mayflower Club in Markfield, I'm just speaking to a few of the members here. Sheena's one of them. Sheena, what are the most important issues in this election for you?
Immigration is one of them. I think we need to make sure that not so many people come in.
Christine, what's important in this election for you?
Well, the housing. I mean, they've built a lot of new houses, and the doctors, there's not a lot of room in the doctors. You have a job to get in now some days.
When I started work at 16, I was going to retire at 60, and when I reached the age of 60, they'd moved the goalposts.
Bosworth has been a reasonably safe seat for Tory David Tredinnick since 1987, but the same voters here have also returned a Liberal Democrat council since 2007. So another national coalition government would be welcomed by many here.
So I'm quite happy with the government we've got, and that's where I think the future lies.
But you think another coalition's the best way forward?
Definitely, yeah.
Why?
It restricts the individual parties. They can't do just as they want to.
So lots of issues to discuss here in the Bosworth constituency. Chief among them is housing, and I'm not just talking about the big sustainable urban extension on the edge of Barwell, but lots of smaller developments like this one on the edge of Markfield. They're important because local voters say they're putting pressure on public services like schools and doctor surgeries.
Well, a lot of issues there to discuss, but housing developments in particular, clearly a huge concern for people living in Hinckley and the Bosworth area. What have you done, David Tredinnick, as an MP on that?
Well, a lot of my life is spent dealing with planning issues because the local Liberal Council, who are up for election on the same day as the general election, have not allocated the houses as they're supposed to. They're required to by government. So we've had arbitrary decisions by appeal officers granting planning in areas where we have green fields, and they shouldn't be there, particularly around Burbage, around what we call De Montfort, in the centre of Hinckley, and it's a real problem. And the sustainable urban extension at Barwell is far too big. There are problems with flooding, there are problems with doctors' surgeries.
OK, well, Michael Mullaney is on that council that you mentioned. What do you say to what David Tredinnick just said?
We urgently need planning reform, and that reform has to happen at Westminster. It's the national central government that's imposing housing numbers on our area. David doesn't stand up in the House of Commons and talk about housing numbers. He talks about astrology and healthcare and other things. He doesn't talk about the important issues that affect local residents. I've said that if I'm elected into Parliament, I will try and introduce a bill so that we have proper local control over housing development. Housing developments are being kicked out in Hinckley all the time, in Hinckley and Burbage and other places.
Your party wants to build 300,000 homes a year.
In the right places. In the right places. We need local control over housing development. Time after time, Hinckley Council throws out housing developments. They're then imposed upon us by the government.
Chris Keeley, you promised to build 1,000 new council homes across the constituency, and your party's committed nationally to building 200,000 new homes a year. But do people in Bosworth really want all these houses?
I think there has to be more truly affordable homes, and I have to say that the coalition politics, this tit-for-tat politics, has to stop. Hinckley and Bosworth deserves better. The two parties, local government and in national government, have been pointing fingers at each other. And what's fallen away is a real plan, which was picked up very clearly in the film, about public services to support that. Last week, speaking to a number of parents, very concerned about primary school places, spoke to one woman who didn't get any of her first three choices. That's not good enough.
OK, and also people obviously concerned, as we saw in our film there, about protecting the green belt, all those issues to do with housing. UKIP are promising to do that, aren't they, David Sprayson?
Absolutely, yeah. It's amazing that we hear the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats talking about protecting green fields when they actually voted against the legal challenge on greenfield development. They voted it down so that there wasn't a legal challenge. We are saying that we should develop brownfield sites. We're the only party that are incentivising brownfield development.
And that's a national UKIP policy,
Absolutely.
isn't it? Well, one of the things that makes this seat so interesting, of course, is the electoral maths, and voters in Bosworth may be tackling the kinds of questions that people all over the East Midlands will be facing when deciding how to cast their vote. Here's how the numbers stack up.
In the last general election, David Tredinnick came top for the Conservatives with the Lib Dems second, Labour were third and UKIP were beaten into fifth place by the BNP, giving David Tredinnick a comfortable majority of just over 5,000 on a turnout of 70%. But it was all change in the European elections. The voting in Hinckley and Bosworth Borough, largely the same area as the parliamentary seat, saw UKIP top the poll with the Conservatives second and Labour once again third. The Lib Dems came fourth, although this was on a much lower turnout of 32%.
So on paper, David Tredinnick, a comfortable majority, but it only takes a bit of tactical voting, Labour voters backing the Lib Dem candidate, and of course you could be in trouble.
Well, the national polls show that the Liberal Party will lose half their seats, and I don't see much support in Hinckley in my area, and I think the Labour Party will come up. But you have to remember, looking at the UKIP figures, they do well in the European elections, but traditionally they trail off, and I think their campaign's been stuttering along a bit.
You sound very positive.
Well, I am, because this campaign looks to me like 92. The 92 general election, John Major was expected to lose, and he won it. And what I'm finding is there are a lot of won't-says out there. They know what they're going to do, but they're not going to tell the posters.
Michael Mullaney, you came second in the last general election, but the Lib Dems came last here in the European election. Not promising, really, is it?
In the 2009 European elections, we finished third behind UKIP. A year later, I got 18,000 votes, as you said, and UKIP got 1,000 votes. They're completely different elections on completely different turnouts. This election will be extremely close in Bosworth between myself and David Tredinnick. And what people have to say to themselves is, do they want an MP, myself, who lives locally, who's taking up the serious issues that concern people, or do they want another 5 years of David Tredinnick as their MP? And I think most people want a change. And if they do want a change, the Liberal Democrats in the Bosworth constituency are the instrument for that change.
Are you trying to woo Labour voters in the area?
Absolutely, and Conservatives who are fed up with David Tredinnick. You know, most of his speeches in the House of Commons are about astrology and healthcare, are telling doctors not to operate on full moons, are telling GPs to use patients' astrology charts. Are these serious issues which people in Bosworth want raising? No, people want an MP who's going to fight on housing issues, education, health, the economy, all the serious issues. They're not being represented at the moment.
Is this fair, what he's saying to you? You do campaign on those issues as well.
Yeah, this is complete nonsense. I've been on the main health committee, health select committee, on the Science and Technology Committee. I chair the Integrated Health Committee. Yes, I've supported homeopathy, which is now law under European directive for vets who are treating organically reared animals. That is now law. You have to be aware of that.
So what's your problem with that then, Michael?
In 2009, in the House of Commons, David Tredinnick stood up and he said that scientists and doctors who disagreed with using astrology in healthcare were racially motivated. I'd like an answer from David as to what he actually meant by that comment. What is racially motivated about opposing astrology in healthcare? You
focus on this. The Indian community were not very happy about some of the things.
OK, well, let's just move on. Let's just move on, because you're obviously not going to agree on it. But David Sprayson, let me bring you in here. UKIP have, of course, a different challenge. You came first in the European election, but have to convert that into votes this time in the general election. Not always been easy for UKIP.
Well, we did tremendously well in the European. We topped the poll, and that was down to hard work. And we've been working out on the street, knocking doors, talking to people since the European election. We're the only party that's done that, and real conviction guys who want to make a change. And we are the only party that offer real change. We're the only party that are prepared to talk about immigration. None of the other three parties talk to people, and that keeps coming back on the street. The pressure on our services through, when we look at the last 18 years, 9 million we've had migration of 9 million people.
UKIP are
adding
campaigning on immigration, as are the other parties as well. It has been a huge issue during this whole general election campaign.
But we are the only ones talking about it on the street, and the people in Hinckley and Bosworth accept that.
Well, there's two parts to this. Firstly, on the point about immigration, we have to tackle the issues that are concerning people around immigration. Yes, pressure on public services. We do need stronger controls. But, crucially, we need a joined-up plan for jobs, skills and education, which is what I called for in our borough, to make sure that local people, young and old, are equipped to be able to be invested in our strengths in the borough, whether it's engineering and manufacturing. But just one more point on the about tactical voting. The Battle of Bosworth is on. Seriously,
it is, but are you worried you could lose out votes to the Lib Dems? I mean, when you hear David and Michael talking, it's a two-horse race as far as they're concerned.
In the latest YouGov Nowcast, in this two-horse race, Michael's coming fourth. So the momentum, I feel, is very different, spread across the parties. Every vote will count. Look at the issues. Our campaign, we're out. As David is describing, we're knocking on doors every day. And it's about being that local, positive, credible choice.
The YouGov poll that Chris talks about is complete rubbish. It's not a Bosworth poll. It's a poll of people with particular demographics. It doesn't take into account the local situation. The reality is, in elections post-coalition, since 2010, the Liberal Democrats won the 2011 council elections in a close election with the Conservatives. In the 2013 county council elections, we got 4 seats each with the Conservatives, 1 UKIP and no Labour.
And you've chosen, Michael Mullaney, you've chosen to make this a very personal contest, haven't you, with the comments that you've made against David Tredinnick about astrology, for example, and you've tweeted about that this week.
Yes.
Why?
Because we need a Member of Parliament in Bosworth who will stand up on the serious issues that are concerning people: housing, education, health. David talks about astrology in healthcare. He talks about doctors not operating on full moons. It is complete rubbish. He shouldn't be talking about these issues.
David?
You've spoken. Look at your speeches.
I have referred to these issues in the past, but the mainstream work is representing my constituents on planning matters, on housing matters, dealing with immigration cases, dealing with health cases. I sit on the local
and nothing
health
to do with
board,
doctors not
and
working on
he
full
knows
moons.
this is
Yeah.
not.
Read
This is
your
not.
speeches, David.
Okay.
He knows this is not
Read your
a
speeches.
true
But
representation.
it has become,
of myself.
obviously, personal,
And
hasn't it?
I don't take this seriously.
Focus
No
on
one's
the issues.
taking his campaign seriously.
OK, we'll have to leave that there. As we heard
Childish.
earlier, though, George Osborne was on the patch again this week and making some big promises for the East Midlands, including